Sony started shipping out their new entry-level Cinema Line camera, the FX30, and I know a lot of you are waiting patiently to get out to start using it. But before you even purchase this camera, there are a few things to take into consideration. This camera is coming in at a very reasonable price tag of about $1,800, but this is just for the camera body. No lens, memory cards, attachments, etc. Even after getting a lens for the FX30, you still need to purchase some memory cards before you can even get started. Let's check out the body of the camera real quick before we dive into the menu. Starting with the left side of the camera, if you're facing the back of the camera, there are two little hidden doors for the charge port, headphone jack, and mic jack. I will confess I had some trouble finding the charge port when I first opened the camera because of these two little hidden doors. There's also a little door for the HDMI output display port on the left side. On the other side of the camera, we have the door to the memory card slots, conveniently marked slot 1 and slot 2. And underneath the camera on that same side, we have the battery compartment. You'll notice a vent on the left side of the camera and on the bottom for the internal fan keeping this little beast from overheating. You can control when the fan comes on in the menu, but it's so quiet that you won't even notice it in your videos. On the back, we have the articulating display screen that tucks away nicely facing the camera to protect the screen. Since this is a camera geared mainly for video, Sony freed up some space and didn't include a viewfinder, so there's nothing in the way from the hot shoe and the components that you can screw into the 3 included 1/4-inch mounting holes on the top. The front of the camera is pretty simple, just the lens, a nice big grip, and a strategically placed record button. Okay, let's hit the menu button. On the left side, scroll down to the video icon, then scroll all the way over to the right, starting with file format. Here we'll select XAVCS 4K. This will give us great quality files that aren't quite as big as the SI 4K setting. Back out of this and down to movie settings, we'll select 24p here. Back out of this and down to record setting, we'll select 10-bit here. Back out to the menu and scroll down to log shooting. Inside here we'll select Cine EI and start working with this profile. Go back and down to color gamut, we'll select the first one here. Back out to the menu and down past the camera set menu area where we're going to need to come back to later. Keep scrolling down, audio recording should be on, and we'll keep the rest of these defaults. Keep all these defaults for now. Select steady shot and we'll set this to active and see how the new stabilization mode works. Scroll down to zoom range. Here we'll select optical zoom if you have a zoom lens on. If not, then set this to clear image zoom so you can punch in with the camera if you want to zoom. Back out to the menu and down to grid line display. I'm going to select on and grid line type rule of thirds grid. We'll scroll past all this and leave the defaults. Stopping at exposure, we'll set the exposure step to 0.3 EV. Back out and down to metering mode. I'm going to select this to multi. Face priority we'll leave on and spot metering point center. Back and down to white balance. I keep this on daylight most of the time, but we can change it accordingly in the function menu. Back and scroll down to zebra display, turn this on. You can keep the level at 70 or crank it up to 100. Back out and down to focus mode, set this to continuous autofocus. The transition speed can stay on default for now. We can leave these other defaults too. Scroll down to focus area, we'll select wide. Focus area color, we'll keep white. Face eye priority on, keep all these defaults. Initial focus magnifier set to 4.0. Peaking display on level high and color red. Okay, scrolling all the way down to airplane mode, I keep this on. You can change the device name here if you want. I'll keep the default for now. Scroll down to language and you can change these 3 settings accordingly. This area lets you set the numbered buttons and dials to whatever functions you want them to be, but they already have everything set and labeled for us, so we won't need to mess with these unless you want to. You can see how everything can be customized. Scrolling down to monitor brightness, we can crank this all the way up, especially if we're going to be shooting outside a lot. Scroll down to fan control and you can set this to auto. The fan is so quiet you won't be able to hear it in your recording anyways. Now we're going to scroll back to video settings, shooting mode area, and select camera set memory. You notice there's 7 areas for presets that are stored on your SD cards. We're going to select number 1 for this first preset. This will be our 24 frames per second setting. For the next preset we're going to make, we just need to scroll up to movie settings and change the record frame rate to 60 frames per second and record setting to 10-bit. Then back out and down to the camera set memory. At the top, scroll over to number 2 and enter. This just set the number 2 preset as your 60 frames per second setting with all the other settings the same as number 1. Lastly, we're going to go back up to movie settings again and select 120 frames per second this time and 10-bit once again. Scroll down to camera set memory one last time and at the top scroll over to number 3 and hit enter. Okay, we now have the first 3 memory presets set for the 3 most popular shooting modes, 24, 60, and 120 frames per second. If you get out of the menu now and press the mode button, you can now scroll to MR1, 2, or 3 and you'll be ready to go. Now if you want to make any little changes to your presets, all you have to do is make the change and scroll to Camera Set Memory, the number you want the change to apply to, and hit Enter. The one thing you'll probably want to add to your memory preset is your shutter speed and maybe even your aperture. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this video, and hopefully you got up and running with the new Sony FX30. Make sure you hit the bell and the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. I'll be using this camera a lot in the future, so look for videos on tips and important information pertaining to it. Not to mention some great sample footage from here in Las Vegas. Until then, we'll see you again in the great digital outdoors.